Yo, what's going on, folks? Welcome to the stream. Come on into the chat. We got a good discussion lined up today. So, yeah, what's happening? What's happening? All right, what's up, Marissa Nato? Good to see you. Pragmatic Crystal, thank you so much for being in the chat, for dropping the links. X, I know who you is. What's happening, y'all? Come on in. Yeah, we gonna have a good discussion today, I promise you. Greet somebody in Reason's name. Hope you guys are having a really good day so far. If not, hopefully this discussion will make things a little bit better, a little bit lighter, give you a little bit of perspective and a couple of chuckles and some aha moments to help it all go down a little bit better. So good to see y'all in the chats. Very good. What's happening, man? What's happening? Are you back? Are you back stateside, or are you still gallivanting around the globe? Bethany Keys, what's happening? Yeah. Shout out to all the Patreon supporters. Appreciate you guys and gals. If you're not a Patreon supporter just yet, scroll up in the chat. Pragmatic Crystal has dropped all the links you need to get down with the squad. So, all right. So we're going to dive into today's discussion. I know there are very many people who are looking at the thumbnail for this and thinking, like, yo, what's up with your man? Yo, he tripping. Yo, this is blasphemy, sacrilege. God's going to get him. Lightning's going to strike him, this, that, and the third. Let me just say, I'm not just doing this and topics like this and thumbnails like this. It's not just to be sacrilegious, though. If I were to be honest, there is a little bit of a like, I don't care. Like, I don't mind angering the God of the Bible. Like, I don't want to anger Christians. I don't want to offend Christians. Like, if I was a Christian and I saw the thumbnail for today's video, I probably would be offended. But I hope you're at least as intrigued as you are offended and you listen for a little while. But I do not mind offending and angering the Christian God. I don't want to offend the Christian, but the Christian God, I promise you, I spent the last 10 years of my life finding out that there's no there. So I'm not in the least bit concerned about God's going to get you for X. So you can send you're in dangerous territory, you're preparing a nice place for yourself in hell. You can send all of that. It doesn't faze me at all whatsoever. I fear your God not. I do fear some of y'all, though. Some of y'all kind of crazy. But I don't fear your God. And if you have to act for your God to reinstate the fear that I should have for him, then that tells you all you need to know about your God. If your God cannot act without you acting, you do the math. But no, I'm not just doing this to piss Christians off or to be sacrilegious. There really is a real question that I'm attempting to ask and answer here. And I remember being a Christian, and in the Christian community, you would have these, every once in a while, you would have men's retreats. And on the men's retreats, it was inevitable that this question was going to come up about Jesus and temptation. And so I said, you know what? At some point, I'm gonna address this, and we're gonna do it today. Why do I have Jesus on the thumbnail with holding the grapes and bananas in one hand and a jar of pickles? Think about this. Like, I live in Philadelphia, and I used to teach in Philadelphia public schools, and You cannot say almost anything without a young person telling you, yo, pause, pause, because in their mind, they're associating what you're saying with something sexual. They're interpreting it in the most sexual way. And so everything is a pause moment. So much that you have to. I remember being in the classroom thinking about saying things to students, and I would have to intentionally like edit what I was saying so that I don't use the word hard. I have to say difficult. And I don't say like everything I was thinking about saying, I had to find some kind of other way to say it because I knew that in their mind it could be flipped to something sexual. Think about like Jesus, right? The way the story is told about Jesus, he knows everything. He knows what's in the hearts of men. He knows the future. He can predict, what's going to happen in the future. But if that's the case, Jesus knows every, and that's what she said, like joke that could ever be told. So, I mean, he's sitting around with his disciples and they're just talking. And imagine somebody just says something that he knows that in 3,000 years, 2,000 years, that's what she said is going to be a common joke. Jesus knows this, but he can't spill those beans. But is he telling like that's what she said jokes in his own mind? If somebody's like, eating some grapes, is he like, oh, thinking the innuendo but not saying it? Or is his mind just too pure to even do anything like that? If one of his mans says something that can be taken as innuendo, does he have the thought to tell the joke and then stop himself? Or does he not even think the joke? If somebody's eating like a long fig, is he like, yo, pause? Or does he not even go there? Flip it. If a woman is around and she's eating the grapes or she's eating the fig, does Jesus's mind not even like play with like, yo, you better watch how you eating that? Like we don't often think about Jesus in human ways. But the New Testament authors actually spent a lot of time trying to craft a Jesus that we could relate to and that could relate to us, and that he's not so holy that he's not human. He's not so human that he can't be holy. They tried to figure out this mixture here. But we don't often today, we've got this image of Jesus where we don't even allow ourselves to think of Jesus having certain thoughts. And I'll prove to you what I mean. About a year ago, there was a popular question going around to women. Would you rather be alone in the woods, alone in the forest, with a man or a bear? And of course, the outcry came from men because many women were saying, I choose the bear, not the men. Because the thought is, I know men. Like the bear might harm me, but the men, they'll do things not just to my body, to my soul. Like just when you think about sexual assault, they said, I'll choose the bear, not the man. Well, flip the question. Would you rather be alone in the forest with a bear or Jesus? So now you gotta think, is that a different question or is it the same question? Because Jesus was a man, right? Now, granted, because of the legend and the tradition and the high esteem we have for the Jesus figure, everyone wants to think, oh, the safe answer is Jesus. But I want you to think about, why is that the safe answer? Why is Jesus safer than a bear? Instinctively, it's because you know Jesus won't sin against you, right? But that's not the question I want us to ask. I want us to think about this. Could Jesus sin against you? Could Jesus harm you? If you choose Jesus over the bear, is it because Jesus won't sin? Is it because he can't sin? Is it because Jesus can't even want to sin? Like, can he want to sin, he just won't? Or can he not even want to sin? Therefore, he's the safest choice because it can't even rise up in his heart to do you harm. Think about that. Can Jesus sin? Can Jesus, to be tempted, you have to have something you have to have some kind of desire within you to do the thing, or else it's not a temptation. Can Jesus even have the desire to do something, even if it's let's say it's not even harmful, like just sexual? Like sex is not necessarily wrong, right? Can Jesus think sexual thoughts? Um, I hang with different women at times, and sometimes we get together, and depending on what she's wearing or depending on what's going on, I might have sexual thoughts. They don't dominate me the entire time. There are times when I'm hanging out with women and a sexual thought doesn't even enter my mind. If a woman is hanging out with Jesus, does the thought not even rise up within him? Or does it rise up within him, but then he taps it down? No, 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 I'm not here for that. And if you know your Bible, you know there's different passages of scripture that would help you answer these, but these different passages of scripture, they all conflict with each other. And you got to figure out, wait, what's the real? Let me ask you in the chat, just throw in the chat. Do you think it was possible for Jesus as the man, even if you think back in your Christian mind, once again, we always do this here. Don't think about it as you now if you're an unbeliever. Put yourself back in the mind that you were when you were a believer. And if you're a Christian watching this, then just answer as you. Is it possible? Can Jesus think sexual thoughts? Not Jesus now as you see him sitting at the right hand of God if you're a Christian. Jesus on earth, could he think sexual thoughts? Throw in the chat, what do you think? Was it possible? I really want to see what y'all are going to say. All right. David Devine says, sure. What was that one I just saw? He came to bring peace, not to bring peace, but a sword. I don't know his intentions. And I could, if we're talking about innuendo, I don't know if your sword there is a euphemism or if you mean like the physical sword. He had a body with hormones. Okay. I thought Jesus could think sexual thoughts without being tempted or something. I don't know. So that's the question. Can he have thought sexual thoughts without being tempted by them? We're going to talk about this in a second. I want a few more comments. Could Jesus have thought sexual thoughts? I'm not even there with you, and I can hear the typing. Darrell Williams says 100% God, 100%. Jesus, 100% man, 100% God. So is that to say yes? As a Christian, I might have said that Jesus' attitude towards everyone was to want good for them and take care of them. So is that a roundabout way to say no? Because think about this, David. If he knows what's in the hearts and minds of men, I'm going to talk about Jesus in a way that we're probably never going, like we never talk about. If Jesus knows what's in the hearts and minds of men, Jesus knows anytime he's encountered a woman who was sexually unsatisfied. And Jesus knows, think about it, he knows every sex position that would ever be invented. So that even men who are not well endowed, if you're not, as big as you think you should be, if you know the right positions and you can still please a woman. Jesus knows all that. So David, if you're saying he wants the best to take care of everyone, and he comes across a woman that he knows instinctively she's sexually unsatisfied, Jesus knows, I know what it takes to satisfy her. Is Jesus able to think those kind of thoughts, or can he not even go there? All right. I see the thoughts coming. All right. So I'm going to change the sex and sexual drive is normal, good, and healthy. Okay. So keep that in mind. We're going to talk about it. Let's go back to the woods. Let's go back to the woods. A gay man in the woods. Is a gay man in the woods safer with a bear or with Jesus? Think about how you would answer that and why you would answer it the way that you answered. Because here's the real question. Is a gay man in the woods any safer with Jesus than a woman in the woods? Think about that. Would a gay man in the woods be safer with Jesus than a woman would be? Embedded in that question is this. Does that gay man have less to worry about because Jesus would not have had homosexual attraction? If you say yes, for whatever reason, whether you think homosexuality is a sin or you just think, well, we don't have any indication that Jesus was gay, even though there are people who have put forth ideas about why his disciples were shocked to find him with a woman at the well. But for whatever reason, why you think Jesus did not have homosexual desires, so that man would be more safe than a woman. If you say that, what you're intuitively saying at the same time is that the woman would be a little less safe because Jesus would have had attraction toward her. And so Jesus maybe would have had to fight a little harder to keep her safe from his sexual desires. Is the gay man safer with Jesus than a woman would have been? Like, would she have to worry about Jesus having to fight those thoughts? I think about the Simpsons episode where he's being tempted. Homer Simpson is being tempted to commit adultery, and he gets in an elevator with this woman that he's attracted to, and in his mind he's telling himself, think unsexy thoughts, think unsexy thoughts, think unsexy thoughts. Did Jesus ever have to coach himself to think unsexy thoughts? Or did he just never even have? Is the woman less safe than a gay man would be? Katie says, woman is safer. Jesus would not want to change the gay man and make him desire something he doesn't really want. Jesus would want to change the gay man and make him desire something he doesn't really want. Interesting. Wow. So the woman's safer for a reason that I didn't even think about, you're saying. Because if Jesus is there with the gay man, Jesus is going to try to convert him. Very interesting. Marissa says, if the gay man was a top rather than a bottom, I think he would be safe with Jesus. All right, so that's the on rant into the discussion that I want to spark. I know y'all like, yo, this dude is wilding. But no, these are good things to think about. Why? Because once you begin to think about these things, you start realizing the plot holes in the Bible. What is the Bible? The Bible, especially as it relates to the story of Jesus, is you have men that you could never know who they are. You have no idea who wrote the book of Hebrews. You have no idea who wrote the Gospel of John or Mark. You don't know who any of these people are. You only have some idea that some of them knew of the other people's writings because they're taking whole large swaths of the other person's writing and putting it in their writing. So you know whether or not this author knew this author, he at least knew his work because he's copying it. But we don't know what the interaction was. We don't know he's copying some of it and then changing the rest of it. So is that his way of disagreeing? Like, yeah, he got that part right, but I'm gonna change this part. We don't know what the relationships are, but we do know this. Several of them say conflicting things that cannot be true at the same time. So in the early church era, what you have is a legend of Jesus developing. And you've got some people wanting to make much of Jesus, so much that he becomes a demigod and then he becomes God. So you see this elevation from mere man to the Logos, to everything was made through him. And so you're making Jesus more exalted, you're lionizing him. So much so that other people say, well, damn, if he's all that, if he's all these things you're making him out to be, he had a hand in creation and all that, then he's not a man anymore. So then you have other authors who say, well, I got to go the opposite extreme to put his feet back on earth because y'all made him so lofty. I got to prove that, no, he's still a man. So now the other authors are writing things to show you, no, he's not so high. He's still a man. And I'm going to write things. But now these authors who are trying to show you his humanity are conflicting with the authors who are trying to show you his divinity. And one of the authors who are trying to show you his humanity, yet wrestling with, but I got to keep him holy, the author says something that creates a problem for the rest of us. And the author says that Jesus was tempted in every way that we are tempted, yet without sin. That is a huge problem. Tempted in every way that we're tempted, yet without sin. When I used to go to these men's retreats as Christians, the question would invariably come up. Like, should it really comfort me that Jesus was tempted? He knows the degrees to, like, he knows the ways in which I'm tempted, and he's faced it, yet without sin. Is that true? Does he know what it's like to deal with lust? Now, somebody could say, Jesus had, if he was 100% man, he knows what it's like to be a man without the sinful part of it. So let's say sexual desire. That's a natural desire. We would even say that's a God-given desire. Okay, so did God give Jesus sexual desire? And what did Jesus do? Did he, like, in your mind as a Christian, you wanted to say maybe he had sexual desire, but he did such a good job of tamping down that sexual desire and putting God's glory first, his mission of why he was on earth first, that even when he had sexual desire, he just like Christians are told to do, he just took every thought captive and submitted it to God. Like, no, I'm not going to think those thoughts. But I'm going to go a step further. Okay, I don't want to just know if Jesus has sexual desire. I need to ask a different question. And so, women, I'm going to give you sort of a window into just the way that men think. And if you're a man and you're like, no, I don't think like that, that's just you. Okay, then let us know in the chat. So it's not just sexual desire. We can ask and answer that question. Did God give Jesus sexual desire? That's natural. Why even is it natural? Like, if you look at it from just from pure biology, there's a drive within us to want to reproduce. The cells that came together to cooperate to make us us, they want to reproduce, and it produces within us a desire for sexual activity. Did Jesus have that? But then go a step further. Go Herders God asked the question, but the question that you just asked is sort of a natural outflow of the question that I want to ask. Is not, did Jesus have sperm? Did Jesus get erections? Because if you do have sperm and those sperm want to exit your body, the way that your body's going to signal you like, hey, it's time to get some of these out of here, is you're going to get an erection. Did Jesus get erections? I would like to see your answers to this one in the chat. Did Jesus? So it's one thing to say, yes, he had natural, healthy, even if he didn't have a sex life, he had a sex drive. Okay, maybe he didn't have a sex life, he had a sex drive. Access. Did Jesus get erections is crazy. We got to talk about it. Did Jesus have a sex drive? Did he get erections? So a little window into the male psychology. You don't, if you're able to get erections, you don't just get erections. You get erections with accompanying desires. When your body part stands up like, it's time, almost everything in you starts thinking about ways to facilitate that and make that happen. Yep, y'all are in the chat. Y'all are already saying all the things that you have to start thinking about once you start thinking about this. I see the things that are coming up in the chat from Saul Mighty. Yes, exactly. All of these start coming into mind. Did Jesus get erections? So we're gonna talk real. Can we talk real talk? There's a physiological phenomena that we know of, and we colloquially call it morning wood. Right? You wake up in the morning. As a male, with a pretty standard, I would think, healthy sex drive, you wake up in the morning and you before you even try to think a thought, your body is just erect. It's like, damn, okay. And it's natural to respond to, okay, this is what my body is doing. And the mind and the body are intertwined. And so you begin to think about ways to act on what your body is telling you. Hey, your body's tugging like, that's even a crazy word to say, right? your body's like, hey, it's time to do this thing. I want to do this thing. We built up an amount of semen, sperm, and you need to get this out of here. Your body's trying to and your mind is thinking about how you'd like to get it out, like, and with whom you'd like to get it out, and in what way. Did Jesus think those thoughts? Or if you say no, the question I want you to consider is, if Jesus did, I'm seeing your comments and I'm bugging up your comments. If Jesus did get an erection, what did he think about while he was hard? Like, and think about this. In their culture, women are always, their faces are covered a lot of times, at least the head is covered, your body, you're not wearing anything tight or revealing. But Jesus, who knows the thoughts that are in men's heart, also knows what's under the woman's flowing robe. So he sees and knows every body type, even if you can't make it out with your human eyes, he can. Was he ever attracted to a woman? Because if he was tempted in every way that I am, yet without sin, I want to know, in what ways was he tempted like me? I know the thoughts that run through my mind when I get an erection. I'm just be real. There's sometimes, especially in the morning, if I wake up and I'm erect, I could penetrate a wall. Like, I don't care what's going on. I'm trying to get at something. Did Jesus have those kinds of thoughts? And what did he think about? Did he ever see people in his society and think, I would like to, oh no, I can't. Ooh, but I would. Like, did his mind go there? Because if you say no, then no, he wasn't tempted in every way that I'm tempted. But it gets deeper. It gets deeper than this. Because if Jesus is thinking these kinds of thoughts, or maybe he's not allowed to, or maybe he's submitting these thoughts to God, I don't know what he's doing, Jesus makes it worse for himself. And see, here's why if you were a Christian, or when you were a Christian, here's why you couldn't allow yourself to even think these kind of thoughts. Because Jesus himself says, you've heard it said that if you commit adultery, Jesus said, you've heard it said that thou shalt not commit adultery. That's what's written in the law. You can't commit adultery. But Jesus ups it. Jesus ups it and says, if you even lust after a woman in your heart, you've already committed adultery with her. So now you have to try to split the hair and say, is it possible to have attraction, because it's part of being a human being, and he was a human? Is it possible to have a sex drive? He's a human being. Humans have sex drive. Is it possible to get an erection? That's part of being a man, and he was a man. Is it possible to have all that? Think the natural thoughts that you would think, but not be lusting. Jesus says, if you've even lusted after a woman in your heart, that's sin. So now he's painted himself into a corner, or at least the biblical writers did, the ones who want to make him out to be a man who can relate to us. But Jesus has already said, if you're thinking about it and if you're lusting in your heart, it's sin. Now you start trying to do the semantics to say, okay, then maybe Jesus did everything but lust. He thought about the woman sexually. He wanted to use his erect penis, but he knew he couldn't. He did all that without sinning. But can you do all that without violating the rule that Jesus already set? If you've thought about it in your heart, if you've lusted in your heart, if you just had the desire within you, that woman's not your wife. And so here's one of the tricks that I used to use back when I was a Christian, right? When I used to fantasize about sex. This is crazy. One of the tricks I would use is if I fantasize about being a married man doing this, then maybe it's not a sin. So then maybe Jesus used that ploy, like maybe he thought the thoughts, maybe he did. Maybe we don't want to say lust because that seems too sinful, but lust is just desire. Jesus had the desire. Michael Apple says, this is so weird, I know. But I mean, because we don't think about these kind of things. But these are the things that once you've got biblical writers who are trying to make this God-man thing work. But if you don't think about it, you kind of just let these things kind of just breeze by. It's only when you stop to think about it that you realize how bizarre the belief system actually is. So maybe we don't want to say he lusted, but lust is just desire. You can't tempt somebody with something that they don't have a desire for. You can't tempt me with a naked gay man. I don't care how well his physique is. If I don't have a desire for you, you're not going to be tempting me. It's like the Key and Peele sketch, right? We just watched it this weekend. The Key and Peele sketch where they got these black folks in Germany during World War II, and the Nazi soldiers trying to find Jews and black people so that they can, get them out of here. And he goes to the house of these two black guys who had their faces painted white. And then the Nazi soldier is trying to out these two black men as black men, and he's trying to throw things at them to see if their natural black instincts will kick in. Now, if they wanted to be stereotypical, he would have pulled out something like fried chicken or watermelon or something like that, if the joke was to be stereotypical. But the joke in the sketch was this Nazi commander had the wrong idea of what tempts black people. So he was like throwing like cat toys at them and things that they're like, wait, you thought that was going to tempt me? Like, no, that's not what you use to tempt me. In the same way, what do you use to tempt Jesus? If one verse wants to say Jesus was tempted in every way as we are, yet without sin. Yet on the other hand, Jesus says you can't even be having these thoughts without actually committing the adultery in your heart. How do you tempt Jesus? What do you wave in front of Jesus? Now think about it. You do have passages where Satan supposedly takes Jesus and takes him up to a high mountain and shows him all the kingdoms of the world. Tells Jesus, hey, if you just bow down before me, were those real temptations? Did Jesus have desires for those things? You can't tempt somebody with something that they don't have a desire for. Was Jesus tempted in every way that I am? Did he have a desire for women? Now, if you think that's bad, it gets worse. There's one more scripture that you have to add into this mix that really shows you that the New Testament writers have painted themselves into a theological corner. Scripture says, let no man say when he is tempted that he is being tempted by God, for God cannot be tempted, nor does God tempt anyone with sin. I'm not even going to focus on the idea of God cannot be tempted, because if Jesus was God, he can't be tempted. But maybe because he was a God man, he can. We could spend a lot of time on that, but we're not. The verse goes on to say, you're not being tempted by God. The verse says, each man is tempted when he is led astray by his own sinful desires. So has Jesus ever really been tempted? Because according to this gospel, or not gospel, this Bible writer, this biblical author, God's not going to tempt you with sin. You're only tempted when you're led astray by your own sinful desires. So now I've got to ask, did Jesus ever have sinful desires? Because if Jesus can't ever have sinful desires, then he can't ever be tempted, at least not in the way that I was. The scripture says, I'm tempted when I'm led astray by my own sinful desires. If Jesus never had sinful desires, then Jesus was never tempted, at least not in the way that I'm tempted. So once again, you've got a plethora of New Testament writers trying to balance out the depiction of Jesus. He's a God-man, but he's not so much God that he can't relate. He's not so relatable that he can't be God. And in the quest to do all this, you're painting yourself into these corners. But here's the thing. What you're looking at is a romanticizing of a historical figure if he's historical, or the historicizing of a mythical figure if he's mythological. If he's mythological, you've got to write things to put his feet on the ground to make him historical. If he's historical, but now you got to tell all these, you're making this legend about him, you've got to say things to make him more than just a man. And so you lionize him. But in doing that, you're inevitably going to say things that can't possibly be true. You're going to contradict. I'll make this last point and then I'm out of here. I think about hip hop, right? I used to teach classes in high schools about the history of hip hop. And there's a portion of hip hop history that even the godfathers or the fathers or the architects or the first generation, even they tell it a way that it didn't happen. So you can find clips online of people like KRS-One. KRS-One is one of the first people to pick up the mantle of conscious rap or woke rap. He didn't invent it. Most people say conscious rap was invented about 6 years before KRS-One came on the scene in a song called The Message. It was the first rap song that actually had a message. And you've heard it, right? Some of the lyrics say, broken glass everywhere, people pissing on the stairs, they just don't care. The refrain from the song is, don't push me because I'm close to the edge. I'm trying not to lose my head. Ha, 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 ha. That's the message. And the song is very somber, bleak, and it's talking about the inner city and what's going on. And they say that song, The Message, is what sparked conscious rap or woke rap. So KRS-One tells the story, though. He says when hip hop was born in 1973, he says gang activity stopped overnight when hip hop was born. Now, KRS-One was not a hip hopper at that time. He was too young. KRS-One might have been 5 or 6 at that time. Matter of fact, no. Yeah, he probably would have been around, 5 or 6, somewhere around there. He's telling the story, but he's romanticizing it. The people who were around at the time, if you ask the gang members who were around at that time, the Savage Nomads and the Black Spades and the Ghetto Brothers and those people, they would tell you there's actual interviews of people from the gangs saying that's bullshit. God, he literally says, I was a baby spade. You had the Black Spades and I was a baby spade. That's the 12 or 13-year-olds who are not old enough to join the real gang yet. There was a group called the Baby Spades. He says, I was a baby spade when hip hop started. And no, that's bullshit that KRS-One is talking. Gang activity did not stop overnight when hip hop was born. KRS-One, who we call the teacher, is wrong. He's teaching false history about hip hop. But why do people tell those kind of stories? When hip hop was born, there was all kind of gangs in New York City. And hip hop did help people. Think about what Afrika Bambaataa did with the Zulu Nation. They did help people curtail the violence, They would say, yo, come to the parties here. They would say, come in peace or leave in pieces. Like the gang is going to make sure that this is a peaceful party, but if you start tripping, we're going to stomp you out. So yeah, gang violence was curtailed, but it didn't stop overnight. But the old heads like to tell the story a certain way because by romanticizing it, they can create this legend of how, especially when people are hating on hip hop. You got, the older generation saying, oh, you young kids with that hip hop, you ruining these records and you're not making real music. You want to romanticize it to make it better than people are trying to make it out to be. So you say things like, oh, it stopped gang violence overnight. I was guilty of it too. I would say things like gangster rap started in 1988 with NWA. And then you find out a little bit more like, oh, okay, you had people like Coogee Rap before that. You had Schoolie D. Maybe Schoolie D was the first person to rap about using a gun. In the song PSK, Schoolie D says, talking to another rapper who's stealing his rhymes. Schoolie D says, I pulled out my pistol, put it to his head, said, sucker ass nigga, I should shoot you dead. In 1986, the song was called PSK. What does it mean? They said that's the first gangster rap song. He's from Philadelphia, 1986. That's the first gangster rap song. He's talking about shooting somebody in the head for stealing his rhymes. Wild thing is, the same year, the Beastie Boys, they had a song. And I remember this in the Beastie Boys song, he talks about being a pistol packing, liquor drinking, no money bum. I hail from Brooklyn because that's where I'm from. These three white boys or three Jewish boys from New York talking about packing a pistol. That's 86. That's 2 years before NWA. I said, damn, I used to tell this story that NWA ruined hip hop with their gangster stuff, but then it got worse, y'all. I found this out just the other day in one of my group chats. Somebody was talking about the song, The Message. And I said, damn, you know what? As much as I've taught classes on hip hop, even wrote books, I never listened to the entire song. The Message is 6 minutes long. I never listened to the entire. I went back to listen to the entire song. Guess what, y'all? The Message, the song that sparked conscious rap. Go to the third verse, and the guy says, I can't go to the park after dark because it's so crazy out here. And he says, I got my hand on my gun because they got me on the run. Talk about how bad the streets are. He walks around with his hand on his gun. The first song that sparked the conscious rap movement is one of the first songs that even talks about walking around with your hand on your gun. Before NWA, before the Beastie Boys, before PSK making that green. 4 years before PSK to be exact. What am I saying? I'm saying we romanticize hip hop history because we like telling the story a certain way because it gives us a sense of honor, a sense of pride. We have a culture that it don't have to be NWA, it don't have to be gangster rap or drill rap, because back in the origins it was this, and when it came out, it stopped the violence in New York. No, it didn't. But you romanticize it because you like to tell the story a way that gives you some sense of value for your culture. In the same way, I know that was a long excursion. In the same way, the New Testament writers are telling stories about Jesus, and they're trying to paint him in a way, we don't know what this man was like. We don't know what kind of thought. Jesus probably, I'm not going to say probably, if he existed as a real person, if he didn't tell dirty jokes, he at least thought dirty jokes. If he's safer than a bear, he at least struggled with, if he was a man, he was a man. The Christian wants to say, but he wasn't a sinful man. Okay, take sin out of the equation. Is it sinful to even think the thought? Is it sinful to think about gratifying this desire that your body is telling you that you have? You have this, and it's weird because if you buy into the legend, would Jesus have had the evolutionary drive to reproduce? Does he have normal cells like you and me, and his cells are screaming for reproduction? Or does he have God genes and his cells are not trying to reproduce? Because if his cells are not trying to reproduce, then he doesn't have a normal sex drive, so he wouldn't have a normal sex life. Nobody even have the thoughts. So which is it? You can't just tell me he's a God man, and I got to respect the fact that even if he was a man, the God part kept him from sinning, because if he's tempted in every way that I am, His body is calling for what my body is calling for. His mind is putting things together like, oh, you got this physiological need. Here's how you can meet it. And is it sinful to think about meeting that need? Because according to Jesus, if you've even lusted in your heart, it's sin. So then Jesus is sinful. And if he's not, then he's not a man. He doesn't have natural desires. Anyway, that's all I wanted to say. I just wanted to say, if you're going to buy into the legend, you're going to have to buy into the contradictory ideas of a God man, and it doesn't work. It doesn't work. At some point, you're going to have to take away the deity or take away the humanity, or else recognize you're dealing with myth and you're dealing with legend. All right, that's all I have for today, y'all. If you got any thoughts, throw them in the chat. Let me see if I missed any super chats while I'm here. I think I'm spoiling y'all because I've been taking y'all comments and just throwing them on the screen without super chats. But feel free to super chat, help support the channel. If you're not a Patreon supporter, be sure to subscribe to the Patreon. Like this video, drop a comment on this video, subscribe to the channel. Thank you, Pragmatic Crystal, for dropping that in the chat. Thanks for stopping through, y'all. I hope y'all enjoy y'all day. And if y'all got any comments, I'm sure I will see y'all in the comment section. Much love. And I'm out.